Welcome to the Invest for More Real Estate Podcast. My name is Mark Furgeson, and I am your host. I'm a house flipper. I flip 10 to 15 houses a year. I own 13 rental properties with a goal to buy 100 by 2023. I'm also a real estate agent. I've been licensed since '01. I run a team of 9. We sell close to 200 houses a year. So on this show, we like to interview house flippers, landlords, and the best real estate agents in the business. So stay tuned for some great shows. If you want more information on my rentals, on the numbers, how I buy properties, check out investformore.com. Hey everyone, it's Mark Furgeson with Invest for More. Welcome to another episode of the Invest for More Real Estate Podcast. I'm super excited. I have a really great guest on for this show, Gino Barbaro, who has over 500 units of rental properties right now. Super successful investor. He also has a website, jakeandgino.com. Unfortunately, Jake can't be here today, but Gino can fill his shoes. Gino, thank you so much for being on the show. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, Mark. How are you?
I'm doing really good. Always I'm excited to talk to investors, especially investors who have seen as much success as you in finding out how you got there, what you learned along the way, and any advice you have for the listeners. So thank you for being on the show.
My pleasure.
So when you've been investing in real estate about 15 years, what first drew you to real estate and what were you doing at that time?
Well, I was fortunate. I had two parents that were, entrepreneurs. My dad owned a restaurant. Got into the restaurant business with him, and they always had real estate as a side gig, but they never thought big. They thought, let me own the building that I have the restaurant in. Let me own maybe one or two properties. I'll be happy working. The economy 20, 30 years ago was a little bit different where you didn't need that kind of passive income. If you had a great business, small little business, you could do really well. So that was my introduction to it. I loved it. In the restaurant business, as you know, when it snows, you're not getting paid. But in rental business, you're getting paid every day of the month. So that was my sort of paradigm shift into how I got into real estate.
Okay, very cool. And it's funny, I had another guest who was in the restaurant business as well. And he said, completely different businesses, but they both use real estate, but besides that, that's about the only similarity between the two.
Mark, there is one similarity. It's with every other kind of business. It's really tenant or customer driven. You really have to take care of your tenant or your customer coming into your place of business. So when you have that mindset as a business owner and you look at the income and the expense of your business, that's what really helps out if you're a business owner getting into real estate. So I found that to be really helpful for me.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And I think, like you said, just about any business, if you take care of your customers or your clients, you can build on it, be successful, build for the long term. So that's great advice. So when you first got interested in real estate, what were you doing? Were you doing another job? Did you have your own business? What were you up to?
Well, what happened was I started my restaurant business about 20 years ago. I got out of college back in 92, which everyone knows was in real estate was a downturn. The economy stunk. I couldn't find a job. So I went to work for AIG as reinsurance accounting. And as I like to say, that's about as much fun as watching paint dry on a wall. That's how boring that job was. So I was stuck going to Manhattan, commuting for about a year. I was just stuck in a rut. I said, I got to get out of this. So I ended up going into the restaurant business. I loved it. It was great. But, it was that real estate thing that was just kept pulling me. So I decided back about 15 years ago, I bought my first rental property with my brother and I was hooked. I just loved it. I love the fact that you can go collect rents, just amortize a property. You get that capital appreciation. I saw the big picture, but I was still in the restaurant. So it was very difficult to juggle two things. Fast forward about 5 years ago, met Jake at the restaurant. He was doing a lot of catering with my brother and myself. I said, Jake, what are your plans for the future? He says, I'm going down to Knoxville, Tennessee. I'm going to work for GlaxoSmithKline, but I want to do real estate. I said, let's just keep in touch because the New York market is difficult up here to cash flow. It's hard to make money in this market. So when Jake started about 5 years ago down there, got in touch. And, like Jake likes to say, the first 2 years we were doing it, we got rejection after rejection. We had no portfolio. We had no credibility. 3 years ago, in February, we bought our first property, 26-unit property, which Jake likes to call the crack den. It was a distressed property, but we saw, when you're a newbie, you just don't see the impossibilities. You see the possibilities. That's what's great about being something new to something. You just see the possibilities, and that property was our launch into the business. 25 little units there, little cottages and everything. We bought it for $600,000, 10% owner financing, 10% bank financing. We had a great real estate agent who guided us along the way. And, the rest is history. 3 years later, we're just cranking out. Jake quit his job doing real estate full time. And me, in 2 months, I'll be moving down to Jacksonville, Florida in 2 months, and I'll be doing real estate full time myself.
Wow. Congratulations. That's
Thank you.
Quite a whirlwind.
It really is. It really is a whirlwind. And, you just have to seize the moment. And, it's scary. I'm not going to lie to you. It's, you go around, but if you have that drive and you have that emotion and you want to do it, I think anybody can do it if they really put their mind to it.
Right. No, that's great stuff. I'm curious. You said you started investing in New York quite a while ago, or you said about your first rental property. Was that in New York? Your first?
Yes, it was. It was 2002. I remember the dates because I bought that first property. It was a 3-family property. And the little story behind that, I had spoken to you about how we make mistakes in a previous podcast. I made a mistake with that property. I bought it. It was a 3-family. Now I'm going through the town now to get the 4th apartment legalized. It was a 3-family. We had bought it as a 4. And back in the day, no one did any COs. No one did any kind of searches. So no one said anything. So now I'm paying the prices. I'm trying to refi the property. I'm trying to get the 4th unit legalized. So that was the first property that I bought with my brother. It was great. Nice little 3-unit property.
Now, I have a lot of people from New York. They run into the same problem. You just can't cash flow in New York because prices are so high. Was the market different back then? Have you seen the market progress, or has it always been difficult?
No, I think back then, 15 years ago, I think the big problem with New York is the insurance and the taxes. Our taxes are very high, property taxes on the property. And, the per unit costs, if you're going to spend $100,000 per unit in New York, you might get $1,000 a month for rental income on that unit. Down in Knoxville, what I see down there is we can spend $40,000 a door or per unit, and we can get $600 to $650 per month. So you can see the imbalance there. You're getting more income and you're paying less per door. And the other thing is that property tax is so much cheaper down in Knoxville. The insurance is so much cheaper down in Knoxville. The labor costs are so much cheaper down in the South. Whereas opposed to where we are, it makes a huge difference. And the other problem is now that I'm going through all these hoops to get the property up to spec or up to, make it legalized, it's a big expense. You have to take out building permits. They cost $3,000 to do, any kind of job. It becomes prohibitively expensive up here to do business.
Right. No, that makes sense. And I know New York, New Jersey, Illinois, many of those places have super high taxes. So give me for like the same, say $100,000 property in New York versus Knoxville. What do you think the tax difference is?
We bought a property, 136 units 2 years ago. The tax base on that property was around $40,000. I've got a property in New York, which is worth $1.2 million, and the tax base on that is about $30,000. So you can see that it's just so out of whack here. It's crazy. And part of the problem is it's, a lot of these states that you mentioned, they tend to be a little more liberal. They tend to be a little less business friendly. New York, you mentioned, New Jersey, you mentioned, Illinois, you mentioned. A lot of these states tend to have liberal policies against businesses. And, a lot of investors have to be wary of that, of where they go in their market. They have to look for job growth, which is extremely important. They have to look for tax bases and tax rates. That's extremely important. Go look at your Chamber of Commerce, see what they're trying to do, see how they're trying to get businesses there. I'm moving to Florida because it's such a business-friendly state. There's no state income tax down there. They want businesses and people to move down there. That's what you have to look for when you're investing in real estate.
No, that's great advice. And one thing that obviously is not a very liberal state, but Texas has high taxes too, but then they have no income tax. They make up for areas. So it's great if you live there, but if you're investing there and you don't live there, it's not so great. So yeah, many things you have to consider.
Well, Mark, how is Texas as far as job growth? I mean, in a lot of their markets, they do have that really good job growth. So when you take those things into consideration, I always look at also the rental rates. How are rental rates rising? So if you've got big job growth, 2% year over year for at least 2 years, you've got people coming into that market, your rental rates will be rising. So that's one thing to take into consideration when looking at a market also. Yeah,
for sure. Yeah, there's so many different things. Yeah, I would avoid any place that is losing population, losing job growth.
Yes, definitely. Like New York.
Yeah. Yeah. So how many properties do you have in New York right now? How many units?
Right now, I've got a 3-family. We own a restaurant business here that has also 3 units above it, which was great. I mean, it's just carries the mortgage, and basically the restaurant's there functioning as a business of itself, which is awesome. You have the restaurant business downstairs paying rent to my mom who owns the building, and she's got 3 units upstairs. And then I have a commercial building in New York that I'm actually trying to sell because I'm moving down south. That's about 18,000 square feet. It's got retail component, industrial component, and it's got offices upstairs.
Okay, wow. So before we get too far into some other topics, what were the biggest differences you saw between the commercial and the residential investments?
Right now, I just don't like commercial. I think commercial is going to be very difficult going forward only because of the internet. I mean, it's 15%, I think, of internet sales, 15% of what's being sold in retail right now, and it's growing tremendously every year. So I think a lot of the big box stores, although they'll still be there, I think what's going to happen is they're going to be taking less and less space. The Home Depots of the world, the Best Buys, they're going to be shrinking down and consolidating. So there's going to be less demand out there. There's going to be more supply out there. I'm a little worried about commercial. Jake likes to say that you can't live in the internet. And that's why I love the apartments. You have to rent an apartment. You have to live somewhere. So if you can pick a great market, I think there's less risk. You're always trying to avoid your downside risk. So I think that's why we like apartments. Industrials is funny because industrial, it's the whim of the market. I have a lot of contractors. When the economy is good, these guys are looking to rent. But when the economy is bad, they're out of there. So you're going to have some vacancy.
Right. No, it makes sense. And that's always been my biggest hang up with doing any commercial myself is you can have those long, even 5-year, 10-year leases. But then if someone breaks the lease or if they're gone, it can take you a year or two to find a new tenant when you're just sitting there. So
that's right. And what happened? There's so many examples. Circuit City. I mean, you have a lot of these companies that they're never going to go out of business. And let me tell you, when they go out of business, they go real quick. It doesn't take forever. I mean, look at companies like Sears. They used to be anchor stores. Now you have a Sears in a mall. They're basically dead, and you've got to have a lot of capital behind you to do commercial. You really want to be in an A location with A anchor tenants. That'll work. Anything else, I think it's a little bit more riskier.
Right. And you're probably paying for those A locations and A tenants.
That's right.
You're not getting nearly as high of a cap rate because of the secure investment as well.
That's right. And that's one of the other things. I think me and you're on the same page. We want to create wealth. We want to generate passive income. Those investments are more REIT-like for real estate investment trusts where their cap rates are 2 and 3. They already have the wealth. They're trying to preserve the wealth. They're trying to just give a simple rate of return, small rate, like you said, 2-3 cap rate. Guys are happy. Those assets are going to go up in capital appreciation. They're not going to cash flow that well. So I try to stay away from those types of properties. I want both. I want that cap appreciation and I want to generate that passive income. And that's why we invest in the B and C properties. Those properties are the A properties. I tend to stay away from them. Hopefully next time I'm talking to you, Mark, in the next, few months, I'll have that money where I don't have to create the wealth. I can just, I can just, sit on it. But right now we're trying to create it right now.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. And here in Colorado, we've had the highest appreciating market in the country the last year. And we've also seen a ton of those institutional investors move in, buying those big residential commercial properties. And like you said, they don't care about cash flow. They're just parking cash, trying to pretty much keep the status quo. And it really makes it hard for the smaller investors to get a good deal. So that's one reason why I do the single family myself.
And that's one of the important things that I think all the listeners should really focus in on. When you get into the business, pick a niche. Just become strong in something. Like you do the single families, you're really strong at that. We do apartments. We do something called mom and pop apartments where they're just, basic deferred maintenance, a lot of issues with the properties. That's what we really like to focus on. I think those guys, their REITs, that's what they focus on. They do really well. Once you really nail your niche, move on to another niche. And as far as you're saying with these institutional guys, they know where the money's flowing. They know where the jobs are flowing. So if you follow them, they know what markets are hot. You can really make a lot of money by following where the institutional money's going.
Right. But you're going to pay a lot for those.
You are. Yes.
Very cool. So when you were in New York, you saw obviously it's difficult to cash flow in the area. How did you start investing in different areas of the country? What were your first steps? Well,
my first step was, believe it or not, I went to do a coaching program. I went to start coaching with Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Did it for 6 months. I ended up in Rochester, New York, which is the cash flow capital of the world. I mean, it does not appreciate at all. But let me give you some quick numbers. I bought a duplex for $34,000. Each unit was giving me $600 a month in rent. So I paid, and I put another $4,000 into the property. So I'm into this property for about $40,000. and it's cash flowing. It's, grossing $1,200 a month. The taxes were high up there for a $40,000 home. The taxes were about $2,500, but that's New York for you. I mean, it's difficult. That's why people up there can't buy they can't buy homes. So, you start accumulating these homes. They're almost like tradable. So at $40,000, I was making $1,200 a month, which comes out to about $14,000 a year. So you can see after 3 years, that house is basically paid off. But that property 10 years later is still worth $40,000. That's the only issue with Rochester. So I love the model of cash flowing, and I got into the whole property management thing with, hiring a property manager. I like that model. They're a little expensive. They're 12% of the gross rents, but there's a lot of work involved when it comes to dealing with these duplexes because the tenants are management intensive. You really have to stay on top of them. There's a lot of work involved. So that was my first foray into out of my market. I said, let me find a place where I can really cash flow and really make some money. And held those on for a few years. And then, like I said, I met Jake, and Jake went down south. And it was just very easy for me to go down south and invest with him. We buy the properties together. We form LLCs, and he manages the properties.
Very cool. When you decided to invest in Rochester, did you do much research, or was that just kind of where the coaching program was telling you to invest? How did you pick that area?
I did, actually, and the coaching program really helped out. And I just advise everyone who's going to do a life-altering, life-changing thing to their life, they really should get into coaching. They really should find a mentor, find a coach, just to learn about the whole process. And it might take you 6 months before you buy a property, or a year. That's okay, because you're going to be committing a big chunk of your money into doing something. It's like when you go buy a car. People do more research buying a car than they do getting into a job or something. You really have to research it. Make sure it's for you. Start small. I started small. I started one small investment of $40,000. If I didn't like it, I could have sold it. I would have lost a few $1,000s. But, I liked it. So from then, I started coaching with Dave Lindahl, did his coaching program. And, in these coaching programs, they teach you how to search for markets. They teach you about all the parameters you're supposed to look for in a market. And that was really, really helpful for me.
Very cool. Very cool. So what was the first step that you and Jake took to investing in the southern part of the country?
We just went onto LoopNet, believe it or not, and started looking at properties. And, LoopNet's a little difficult sometimes. They don't have a lot of deals, but every now and again you will find a deal on there. But more importantly, you will find brokers on there. So we found brokers on there, and we started calling brokers. We started, pitching them their ideas. Some of them said, "You guys are nuts. You're never going to do it." Some of them said, "You know what? Let's see." So one of the brokers brought us this 25-unit deal. It had been on the market for a few years, and it had something that you need to make a deal in real estate. It was a motivated investor. It was a motivated seller. The sellers were older, and they were just motivated to sell. And they had the property listed at $750,000, and our broker said they'll come down. So they did come down to $600,000. And looking back at it now, we could have probably gotten it for less, but at least we, got our feet wet, and that's how we started. We started on LoopNet, started calling brokers. We used a broker script, telling them exactly what we're looking for, and that's how we started.
Very nice, very nice. So how were you financing these properties at the time?
Like I said, we had gotten an 8% bank loan. The sellers were willing to hold 10% as the down payment, and we came up with 10% as the down payment. So I'll never forget, it was $27,000 for Jake, my brother, and myself, and we were thrilled. It was awesome. You have a $600,000 property, and you have basically, $90,000 of closing costs into it. You're controlling a $600,000 asset with $90,000. It was great. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And you said you some of these properties are distressed that you buy, they need some work. Was that one of those? Did you have to go through and renovate?
Yes.
Rents?
It was really funny. Jake will tell you the story. They had such bad bookkeeping. It was a weekly rental, believe it or not. We actually ended up changing it to a monthly rental. So weekly rentals are great. You get more money, but you also get bed bugs. You get, tough tenants. You get, they weren't doing any kind of screenings. So they had no systems in place, and they didn't even know, who was in what apartment. So Jake, when we did the closing, knocked on doors, asking people how much they're paying in rent and, what the security deposits are. And, 3 years ago, we're just finishing up the deferred maintenance. Now we just refinanced the property about 2 months ago. Property came out, and property was appraised at $800,000.
Oh, nice.
So we were able to pull out all of our money and then some, put some of it into CapEx, and, just got on the phone with Jake this morning. We're finishing up a couple of roofs out there and finishing up the painting on our sixplex. So it looks really pristine. It looks really great. It took a couple of years. Rome wasn't built in a day, and a lot of us, forget about that. It took 3 years, but you can see the payoff of one little tiny property. It's the momentum that gets you going. Once you get that first property, if you're hooked, and you'll find a way to get the next property. I trust you will.
Right, right. No, that's great. And so how did that progress from buying that first one to obviously you've been very successful the last couple of years? Was it just buying bigger properties or more properties? How's that worked out?
Well, what happened was that Jake got hooked more than I did because he started collecting rents and he said, wow, these people are paying me money. I can't believe it. So he saw the big picture. He's like, this is awesome. When you're used to getting, a W-2 employee, you're used to getting a paycheck. But when you're actually going collecting money from people, it's a different feeling. So Jake said, we got to continue with this. I said, okay, but you know what? I don't know where we're going to get the money. I had a friend up in the restaurant business who wanted to become a partner. He said, he was a money guy. He said, you know what? I'm looking to do other investments. So we're looking and looking, and we found another deal on LoopNet about 6 months later. It was a 36-unit property, all one bedrooms, all brick. Great. Same kind of deal, though. A little bit distressed, a little bit of deferred maintenance outside. This was an out-of-state seller. We got the property. We bought the 36-unit with all four of us. We put 20% down, dealing with the community bank. Property was priced at $850,000. So it was, reasonable. We could afford it, but our money's starting to run out. But we got this deal. So now we have two properties under our belt. And I said, this is awesome. Okay, both properties are cash flowing nicely. Fast forward 6 months from that. So it's a year from the first acquisition. We find this 136-unit property. And we didn't decide we wanted to go bigger or smaller. It was just an opportunity that just showed up. And this thing was on LoopNet for $6.7 million. I'll never forget it. And we're like, this is way out of our league. And it had been on for years and years and years, owned by a doctor and his wife and their brother. Same kind of thing. Motivated seller, wanted to sell. And Mark, I just took a chance. I said, Jake, this thing is not really worth that kind of money. It's worth in the low fours. I offered $3.7 million. And this, I thought the doctor was going to laugh at me. And this is one lesson for your whole crew that's listening out there. Just ask. You never know until you ask somebody. You never know what someone else's motivation is. I thought the guy was going to laugh. I thought they were going to laugh at the offer. He actually came down to $4.4 million from his offer price in one shot. So I was like, Jake, we're in business. This is awesome. I mean, we ended up settling at $4.075 million, a little haggling back and forth. We had our real estate broker take a note for part of his commission. We did everything we could to get into this deal. I mean, I begged, borrowed, and stole money to get into this deal. And that's what happened. It was great.
Wow. No, that's a great story. And I think there's a really good lesson there too, in that, I mean, it's weird. I don't understand it, but some sellers will put a price on a property and they won't lower it. They just leave it there, even though they will take less. And you saw that house had been on the market for years. And that's kind of, you can't just go to every seller and offer them, 50% of what it's worth. That doesn't work.
No.
But if you see signs, if you see certain properties that, hey, why is this for sale for 2 years? Or, what's going on here? There are definitely opportunities out there where you can make those low offers and make things work.
That's right. And Mark, part of the problem is that a lot of people, when they negotiate, they don't listen. They talk. Negotiation is 80% listening and 20% talking. So I knew the motivation of the seller. I knew he wanted to get out. I knew it was a family situation. They didn't want to be there. I knew he didn't really need the money. It was just becoming a nuisance to him. So the motivation for this guy to get out was why this deal worked. I'm not telling everyone out there that you're going to get a big property and just throw numbers out. You have to be smart about it because you don't want to get the reputation of just putting in offers and just saying lowballing people. But you really want to know why this guy's selling. So the motivation was there. So that's why this deal worked. And that's what you have to look for. You can't go to a retail property that's in an A market and start throwing lowball offers. That's not going to work. But when you negotiate, listen to what's going on. And that's why a broker is crucial, to have on your team because he should know a lot of this information. Our broker knew the dynamics, what was going on. And he said, you know what, that's not a crazy offer in this type of environment. Let's try it.
No, that's great. Yeah, great advice. What challenges did you find going from, 30 unit properties to 136 unit property? Was it similar or were there some definite changes in the?
Well, you got to scale up business. And part of the thing is simple things like collecting checks. I mean, you're collecting 136 checks now. You've got to get full-time managers on board. We got a full-time manager. The first year and a half, Jake was running around doing a lot of the work himself. To scale up the business, we had to hire. And the fabulous thing about these big properties is, believe it or not, it might be a little scary. It's a whole paradigm shift. Everyone out there saying, I can't do that. I got to stay small. Believe it or not, if you go big, sometimes it's a little bit easier because you can hire a full-time maintenance crew. You can start building systems. You can start saying, okay, I've got this full-time maintenance guy. He can do the work. I've got a full-time manager to staff the office. So that was part of our problem. It was just the whole shift of, can we go bigger? Can we hire enough people? Can we do the bookkeeping? Can we take care of all these maintenance calls? And you know what? We struggled the first few months, but you figure it out.
No, that's great. And yeah, I hear that all the time. I have a team of 10 that help me with my flips, my rentals, my real estate sales. And people say, well, I don't want to get that big. I don't want all those hassles. I just want to stay small. But I can tell you, I am so much happier with a team that can help me and do the stuff I don't like doing than I was doing it all myself. It is so much less stressful, and I love it. So
Yeah, well, Mark, what you're doing is you're working on your business, right? You're not working in the business. And it's tough for me because when I had the restaurant, I had that one store. I'm working, every day, I'm working in the business. I'm doing all the ordering. I'm doing everything. I'm doing the cooking, but you can't grow at that point. You're just basically collecting a paycheck. What you're doing right now is you're actually building a business. You're putting systems in there. You're able to grow. And the same thing with real estate. It's just you're able to grow bigger. So from that 136 units, about a year later, this past July, August, we closed on 281 units. So you can see the progression. We went from 25 to 36 to 136. Then we bought a little 20-unit property in between, and then we bought 281. So the progression's there. I'm not saying you have to start with a huge property, but don't be averse to the idea that you get big, because anybody can do it. And if you don't know how to do it, get out there, get coached, and just listen to people who are doing it, because it's a big, big wake-up call. And once you start cash flowing with these big numbers, you can get into cost segregation of what you can do with your taxes. It's just so many advantages to getting big, believe it or not.
yeah, no, that's great. And I'm curious too, with one aspect of your business and how you set things up, it's you, Jake, and then your brother too, who's investing.
Mm-hmm.
How has it worked working together with two other people? How did you set that up? Have you had any problems with it, or are there tips you have for people who might want to invest with partners?
Well, definitely. I think partners are fantastic in a couple aspects. First thing is you have to get somebody who has sort of similar and yet dissimilar skill sets. Me and Jake are pretty similar. We're really motivated. We get on calls. We do what we have to do. What's great about it is he has a problem. He calls me, bounces an idea off. Ideas are money. So when you have more people in the mix, you have a bigger team, those ideas create money. When we started, each entity we have is in its own LLC, and we're in the process of creating a series LLC that encapsulates all these properties, one bank statement, one whole idea. But it takes time to get to that stage. But each individual property was its own LLC, had its own operating agreement, has its own rules, its own laws. That's just for our own protection and for each of the partners' protection. You have to be on the same page. I mean, me and you, I don't think we'd be good partners because you like to fix and flip and I like to buy and hold. So I don't think our partnership would work in that aspect. So you have to be on the same page as your partner. If your partner likes to go out there fixing and flipping and you're like, wait, I want to keep these properties, that partnership is not going to work. It's going to be a lot of stress. So be on the same page. Me and Jake wanted to get out of corporate America and I wanted to, get into real estate full time. So we had the same vision, same goal set. We wanted to generate that passive income, and that's why this partnership clicked.
Very cool. Yeah. And I do hold too, but I don't know if we'd be good partners.
I just made that, put that as an example because a lot of guys get into business with other guys and they're like, wait, what are you doing?
Right.
You really have to, we have a credibility book. We put something together. Before we started, we created our own mission statement. Every business should have its own mission statement. What do you want to do? And our two things is generate passive income and create wealth. And that's our mantra, and that's what we stood by.
No, that's great. And I don't have partners right now, mostly because maybe I'm a control freak and I like to make all my own decisions. Mm-hmm. When you guys did your partnership, did you put everything in writing from the beginning? Did it kind of evolve? Do you have, contingencies set up if one of you wants to get out of the business? How have you handled that side of it?
We do. We start from the very beginning. I mean, you have to have an operating agreement from the very beginning because you want to make sure that everyone has their own specific jobs. Jake is basically managing, so he gets a percentage of the revenue to manage. I mean, that's part of his job. Gets an acquisition fee when he's finding properties. Sometimes he'll get an acquisition fee for putting the deal together because these deals take a lot of work, a lot of energy. We're closing on 156 units. We just got the deal signed. He's actually there today. We're having problems, technical difficulties. He had to go to the lawyer today, 2:00, do a signing. We've been working on this deal since August. So all the time and effort that goes into a deal, he's meeting, the title agent, talking to the broker, the inspectors getting lined up. There's a lot of stuff going on. So you have to spell that all out from the very, very beginning. It's great. Handshakes are great, and that might work with family, although I would never do something like that. I've made that mistake before, been there, done that. Get everything in writing. Make sure everyone knows what they're supposed to do. Make sure you know the percentages, how much everyone has to put into the deal, and you'll save yourself a lot of headache in the long run.
Yeah, I know it's great advice. And I would advise, even with family, always get it in writing, not just because, of people being shady or changing the deal, but sometimes you forget.
That's
If you
right.
work for somebody for 3 years and then you decide to sell, it's like, wait, did we agree on 30 or was it 30?
That's right.
I mean, it's easy to forget those things, even though you think there's no way you ever would in the beginning. It can happen. No, that's great. And I love the idea of paying Jake or whoever's doing, a job for that job, not just saying, oh, we're 50-50 partners.
No, exactly.
Stuff, because then it gets confusing. People say, well, I'm doing more work than you. Why am I getting paid the same amount? So I love that, for example, if you have a real estate agent on your team, pay them a commission when they get a deal. Don't just say it's all split even and you don't get paid.
That's right. Well, I mean, man, you manage your own properties. It's a really hard business. And if you're not out there managing your own properties, you're managing the manager. So that's a lot of headache. That's a lot of work. That really is. So if Jake's not doing it, we've got to pay a management company to do it. So I'd rather have Jake making the money. Your hands are there. You're doing the job, so you can really control it. So he's worth every penny you pay him.
No, that's great. That's really, really great. What do you think has been your biggest challenge kind of building this business and growing into what you have right now?
Well, a couple of challenges. I mean, first thing is you have to find the time. So when you're working full time, I'm working, the restaurant's about 50 hours a week for me. So coming home, educating myself, having the confidence to get into these deals and say, am I making the right decision? Am I doing something wrong? I just can't see it. When you see a deal that's been on the market for 4 years and you're like, what's going on here? Why aren't they buying? To have that confidence to say, yeah, I can get bigger and I should get bigger. That's what we're here for. We're here to create and to do great things in this life. And sometimes that you get hung up on that. The other thing is fear. Everyone's got fear. Everyone's fear of the unknown. I mean, have you ever done this before? I never bought a 136 unit property, but you know what? You have to take that leap of faith. And what's the worst thing that could have happened? I bought it and I end up selling it a year later. I lose money. It's only money. You just can make money, but opportunities are there. You got to take hold of them.
No, that's great advice. And so from building this huge portfolio, building this partnership, you and Jake started a website as well, jakeandgino.com. How did that evolve?
Well, you know what? I go by the mantra, learn, do, and teach. So you're learning all the stuff, want to acquire these properties. Then you start doing it. And all of a sudden, it's great. You start doing it. You get out there. You never thought you could do it. And all of a sudden, from that doing part, you say to yourself, I want to give back. And best way to give back is to teach, to talk about it. And by you teaching about it, believe it or not, you'll learn so much more. I mean, we wrote a book called Barbaro Profits about 3 months ago. We self-published it. It took us about a year to write that book. But what happened was we came up with this framework, and it really helps us with the investing aspect of it. Our framework is buy right, manage right, and finance right. So it's great. When we go to a bank, we give them our book. We give them our credibility book. We give them our book. I mean, self-published. That's our business model. That's our business plan. So it gives me a lot of credibility to say, hey, listen, this is what we're doing. This is why we're buying this property. So that's how we got into Jake and Gino. We just started, hashing out what our plan was and just start writing one page a day. And all of a sudden, 6 months later, you've got a book.
No, that's great. And I would attest the exact same thing happened with me when I started my blog. I thought I knew pretty much everything about real estate, being an agent for so long. My father was an agent. And then I started my blog to try and teach other people. And I realized how much I didn't know when I started researching and writing. I'm like, oh, wow, there's a lot out there that I had no idea about. So yeah, it did. It was a huge self-teaching tool for myself, not just teaching others, but learning so many different strategies and different ways to do things.
But the other cool thing is me and you are on this call right now. You get to meet so many awesome people. You get to talk to so many different people. You get so many different ideas thrown your way. Like, you think you have all these units, 700 units. We haven't done that many deals. I'm sure you do more deals in a year than what we've done in the last 3 or 4. So you see so many different strategies and you learn so many different things by teaching and talking to other people. It makes it all worth it. It really does.
No, yeah, you're right. That's a huge benefit as well. I've talked to a lot of great people, interviewed a lot of great people, and then there's many people behind the scenes I've talked to as well that people don't realize. And just speaking of that, looking for places to invest across the country, it's always interesting hearing where you guys are buying, what you guys are doing. And speaking of that, you said Florida is where you want to go. What's drawing you to Florida right now?
A, the weather. Because I know you're from Colorado, so you get a lot of snow, and I'm from New York, and the weather last year was just brutal. B, I just want to get out of the restaurant industry. I just want to have a clean break. I think the market down in Florida, in Jacksonville specifically, it's still emerging. A lot of the southern Florida markets have already emerged. Orlando, a lot of job growth, a lot of institutions there. Jacksonville is the biggest city in Florida, land-wise and population-wise, but the institutions really aren't there hardcore. I mean, a lot of people say the low-hanging fruit is gone, and in real estate, low-hanging fruit is usually gone unless you're talking 09, 2010. Low-hanging fruit has been gone for the last 3 or 4 years, but you just have to know how to identify what the low-hanging fruit to you is. So I love the market there. The job growth is great. I just love, the way that it's family friendly. The state has got I've already met, a bunch of people down there. I just love the whole area.
Cool. And are you looking to buy, the same thing, large multi-unit complexes down there?
That's what we're looking to do. We're looking to replicate the whole process. And I've been telling Jake, I've been busting his chops. I said, Jake, you've got the management aspect of it yet. I don't have that management aspect. We've got to build a franchisable model for me to teach me to have all these systems in place, from how does a leasing agent answer the call, to how do you rent a unit, to how do you show a unit, to how you move the tenant in. That's one of my fears, me going down there, because I haven't done it yet. But we would like to replicate the same exact model where we're trying to buy B and C assets, under market, rents under market. There's no ratio, there's no rubs installed, like a lot of these value plays that we want to replicate the same thing in the Florida market.
No, that's great. And I've had my eye on the Florida market too, but I keep
specifically where
I haven't decided yet. There's different. I mean, Orlando. I've heard Pensacola is interesting, but I'm looking more in the single family play, not the apartment play. Florida reminds me a lot of Colorado 3 or 4 years ago, before we went crazy with our boom. So I don't know. I'm not saying Florida will boom like we have, but just the prices to rent ratios are just so much better than they are here right now.
They're awesome. The rent ratios are awesome, aren't they? You can get a $40,000-$50,000 apartment and rent it for $700-800 a month. That's just, to me, you'll never do that in New York. That's just awesome down in Florida.
Right. And then in Florida, there's many places in the Midwest where you can get those numbers too. But like you said, Florida's growing. Florida's got awesome weather. The taxes are good. So there's some other things going for it as well, besides just the rent ratios. Very cool. All right. So I think those were all the questions I had for you. Do you have any parting advice for someone who's looking to invest, kind of like how you have, if they're in New York, if they're in San Francisco and just cannot cash flow in an area where they are at? What do you think their first step should be if they're looking to invest in a different area?
Well, the first step, I think, is make sure you want to be in real estate. It's not easy. It's not hard. It is what you make it, I think. Just make sure you want to devote the time, the energy, and the money to doing it. Once you jump that hurdle, which most of you on this call probably already did, the second thing is to really pick a niche. Pick what you want to do. I don't think there's any right or wrong answer. You want to wholesale properties? That's fine. You want to buy and hold? That's fine. You want to fix and flip? That's fine. You want to master lease? I think that's great. Whatever your strategy is, really learn your strategy from the inside and out. Go on Bigger Pockets. Go on my site. Go on Mark's site. There's so many guys out there that are teaching this stuff. Learn your niche. After you've learned your niche, it's time to jump in the pool. Don't put your little pinky in the pool. Jump in the pool. Whether the pool is big or the pool is small, just jump in and try it. And then once you try it, you've got your education, you try it, you learn. I always give this example. How long does it take a baby to learn how to walk? You're not going to tell a baby, I'm only going to give you 8 months to learn how to walk. That baby's going to take forever to learn how to walk it. And that's why babies end up walking, because we let them try and fail and try and fail. So what happens is people might try, and then after the first failure, listen, I can't do this thing. You're not going to get it on the first or second or third try. I didn't. You just have to be persistent and just learn from your mistakes. If something's not working, just change your course, learn what you did wrong, and just continue.
That's great advice. And many of the very successful investors I've interviewed and talked to, they did not just jump out of the gate, killing it, making a ton of money. They failed. They, had to rethink their strategies, but they learned. While they're doing that, they learned how to do it the right way. They just kept pushing forward.
Well, Mark, I like what you did. I mean, you're a real estate agent. I think if people want to get into the real estate business, I think they should become agents. I'm an agent in New York. I went to become an agent just because not because of the license. I mean, I've given up commissions. I don't really strive for the commissions, but it's more for the education, more for the relationship between buyer and seller. I wanted to learn all about that stuff. And you're immersing yourself in the culture. You're going to a job, a place of business where this stuff is all going on, and you're surrounding yourself in that environment. And from that environment, you'll be able to grow.
Yeah, no, and that's great advice. And I get a lot of questions about, should I get my license if I just want to invest in rental properties? or fix and flips, and people have never bought a house before, never done anything. And I always tell them, like you said before, well, first you want to make sure if you actually like this investing thing. So, at least buy a property or get involved in real estate somehow before you go off and get your license and jump into it. But then if you do like it, then yeah, for sure, getting your license is a huge advantage. For, saving commissions is great, but then being able to find deals as well is a really big advantage for having your license.
But Mark, what do you think about the credibility aspect too? I mean, Mark Furgeson, licensed agent, or, Mark Furgeson, investor or investor agent. I think that having that agent behind your name gives you a little bit of credibility. It gives you, the end when you go to a real estate investment club, you're an agent also. I mean, I think it's just another feather in your cap. Not that you need it per se, but I think the education from it, studying for the exam and being in that environment really helps.
Yes, no, I think that does add credibility as well. And many investors are worried, if they're buying off-market properties or doing direct mail, that they have to disclose that they're an agent. But I think it's an advantage that you can say you're an agent, like you said, because people have a higher trust factor. They can look you up online, see your license, see your website, see that you're not just some guy off the street trying to buy their house for a penny. I think it helps your credibility. And if you're worried about being ethical, then I think you're in the wrong business. So
we can go there. That's another whole show, right, Mark?
Right. Yep. Very cool. Well, great job, Gino. I really appreciate you being on. I think that's all I had. What is the best way to reach you or Jake if someone wants to learn more about what you're doing, get involved with you guys, and possibly do coaching?
Guys, quickest way and easiest way is just to go on to our website. It's jakeandgino.com. Visit us. We've got a lot of products out there. We've got products on udemy.com. We can go on. We've created a couple of video courses on there also. Just go out there and just, crush it.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, I appreciate it. Great job. Lots of good information on it. The show, I learned a lot myself. So I'm glad that other people are looking at Florida too. Of course, there's a big difference between looking at a place and actually making the jump to investing there. So there's a lot of work to be done still.
That's right.
So great. Well, thank you for being on the show. I'm sure we'll talk soon. And have a great rest of the week.
Thanks, Mark.
All right. Take care.